I want to talk about a piece that Tony Abbott wrote today in The Australian. It was profound, it was moving, it was a call to arms for those of us of the centre-right of politics to just frankly not give up hope. It might get worse before it gets better. In part of what he said today, can we put this up on the screen, guys, please? Which is, being against an anti-corruption commission doesn't mean you're anti-honest government. Just being against an Indigenous voice does not make you anti-Aboriginal, and being against ditching the Crown doesn't make you less Australian. Now, these are all quite fair and logical points, but, James, we don't live, sadly, in a society that is dominated by that. We're in a society where we keep believing that that's the silent majority, but the silent majority is often too silent, and a lot of people who will say that they're going to fight don't.
Well, that's the whole thing, though. But, I mean, it ties back to the Andrew Thorburn thing, doesn't it? As soon as you stick your head above the parapet on any of these issues, you know, we're about to see on The Voice a huge campaign by corporate Australia to say, you know, The Voice is a good thing, vote for The Voice, and just quietly, if you don't vote for The Voice, then you're probably a bigot. Now, what does that say to people in corporate Australia, in business, in all sorts of areas? Well, now I've got to support The Voice, otherwise I won't get to trade with the big companies, I won't get a loan from a big bank. Who knows where this all leads? But it now means that there are ideological tests for absolutely everything. It is disgraceful, and it should not exist in a free country like Australia.
Well, and also, you guys talk about it on Outsiders, and some people are going to think this is loopy, but I'm all in, right? Which is the move towards digital currency, right? If they basically say that you're all in and the only way you can trade is through PayPal or through the little bit.
It's a social credit system.
As soon as you end up being a person who has not kissed the ring lovingly enough, bang, no access to money. Here's what Peter Dutton had to say today, a bit earlier, with Chris Kenny in response to the article from Mr Abbott today.
Nick Minchin, who was a key figure within the Howard government, nailed it on the weekend in his contribution. He was heckled by some people within the crowd, but there's an element there of One Nation and Palmer supporters and an extreme right element that, frankly, is you know, on the fringe of the political debate. The people I'm most interested in representing are the Howard battlers, the tradies and people that are working hard, that believe in freedom of choice and all of the values that the Liberal Party represents.
I can hear that CPAC crowd booing yet again watching television right now. All right, now Simon Holmes à Court pushing a book to talk about how amazing he is, how he hacked the system. Got an interview today here on Sky News, which I'm pretty sure is the same company that I work for. Simon, are you really paying attention? Here's what he had to say about the Victorian election, where guess what? They're not running against Labor.
But what's your sense of the Victorian election? Are you feeling confident that that wave will continue?
We've done polling on those electorates that you've shown and found that there is strong support for the community independent model in those electorates. When you ask people in those electorates, would they support a candidate of the calibre of, say, Zoe Daniel or Monique Ryan, then it's a clear win.
But again, Michael, this is not a hack on giving people a community independent. It is, of course, a very clever way of adding yet another thing for people who don't want to go all the way Green, all the way Labor, and then unless the Liberal Party gets 50.1%, which they won't, they, of course, end up losing the seat on preferences, and then yay, revolution.
Well, the Teals in Victoria since the federal election have been hopelessly disappointing. Monique Ryan, in particular, Zoe Daniel. They've played all their cards and they've got no power to basically influence much going forward. By the way, you've got to love people like this Holmes à Court fellow, don't you? You know, these rich people, they prattle on about how they're, the hereditary monarchy is a terrible thing, undemocratic, passing it down. What about death taxes? What about inheritance, hereditary inheritance? Is he in favour of that? It's all very well to say, well, Charlie shouldn't get the job, King Charles shouldn't get it from his mother, but these rich people are entitled to get all the inheritance from their parents just because of an accident of their birth, and they get all that money tax-free. Okay, so let's be consistent here, Mr. Holmes à Court. And by the way, James, can I just take you up on a point? You're absolutely right, mate. I do not want to be lectured by BHP and Rio and all these other companies, many of whom are BCA members, a couple of the American energy companies. Please don't lecture me on The Voice.
Here.
You can lecture people after you've started paying tax. Once you've stopped transfer pricing, double Irish sandwiches, ripping off the Australian taxpayer, not those companies necessarily, there are situations where companies have not been paying tax. I see that good man from the tax office out on the weekend explaining what a good job he's doing, collecting hundreds of millions of dollars from these companies that transfer profits from Australia to tax havens, and then they lecture me on The Voice. No, you pay your tax first, companies like Rio and BHP, and stop giving lectures to middle Australia, working men and women on mortgages who can't pay their mortgage now because of the rate increases, who can't pay for petrol and food, and they're lectured by you people who can afford to pay for advertisements because you're not paying proper tax in this country. Well done to Abbott and Hockey. Well done to Abbott and Hockey, who started on tackling international tax in 2015. Well done to Morrison, and to give credit where it's due to the current Labor government continuing this. Stop these companies ripping off the Australian taxpayer. Do not lecture me on The Voice. Never. Never. Never again.